if the Democrats do not give us the votes for border security.
This president is a bully. He's not going to shut down anything. We're not going to be intimidated.
The Trump legal team ramping up its attacks on President Trump's former personal attorney.
The man is a pathological manipulator, liar.
Wildfires raging in the West with the death toll rising and several people missing.
Crews race against the clock to stop fast-moving winds from fueling the infernos. President Trump lashing out at Robert Mueller over alleged conflicts of interest in the Russia probe. The president tweeting, "We had a very nasty and contentious business relationship."
Democrats take aim at the booming economy.
President Trump is going to take a lot of credit for these good numbers. Don't believe him.
The Democrats, all they have is Trump derangement syndrome, and they don't want to talk about all the great things this president is doing.
I should have been a cowboy. I should have learned to rope.
That ship sailed a long time ago.
right. I didn't realize when I moved to Texas how big the rodeo is.
Big.
I always thought in South Carolina the rodeo was just for farmers. Mm-hmm. Oh my word, it's huge, and they have like a big country musical.
I've never been, but I've heard
it's a lot of fun.
What? I've never been to a rodeo.
They got a big one here
at
Madison Square Garden, believe it or not.
Yeah, they do.
I need to do that. Yeah.
Put it on your bucket list.
It's on the list.
We're going to do that sometime. Pete is in for Brian. Brian is off this week. It's good to have you. And for everybody who showed up at Fox Fan Day over the weekend, thank you very much for coming. We're going to show you some highlights a little later on.
Yes.
It was a fun time.
Meanwhile, Pete, you were busy this weekend.
It was
the president was his thumbs must be exhausted.
He was tweeting again.
Well, of course, you heard Mitch McConnell on Friday came out on a radio interview and said, well, we just might not get to that wall funding this year. It might have to go to 2019.
Right.
And the president took some issue with that.
Well, Mitch McConnell and Paul Ryan went to meet with the president last Wednesday, and they talked about this. And the president said, look, I need another $5 billion. The goal is $25 billion. You've already given me some, but we want to continue to build the wall, so we need the $5 billion. And then they walked out of the room with the assumption that the president might be okay with them waiting until after the November elections. But that wasn't the case if you read his Twitter account yesterday.
Apparently, he thought about the deal that they suggested, and it's like, whoa, what the heck were they talking about? The president tweeted this out. I would be willing to shut down the government if the Democrats do not give us the votes for border security, which includes the wall. Must get rid of lottery, catch and release, etc., and finally go to a system of immigration based on merit. We need great people coming into our country. So the president, once again, is made it very clear. He wants to build the wall, but for some reason, he cannot get it through Congress. I mean, the House has passed a couple of things. The Senate tried last time. I think he only got 38 or 39 votes in all. So there's some frustration because he's 19 months in and he cannot build the wall.
And I feel like now is the moment to get people on the record. So they've had some votes on abolish ICE or support ICE, which is pretty straightforward. Same thing with the wall. Put people on record. Make them vote now. Do you want to fund this border wall or not? And then go to the voters with it. Because I think ultimately that kind of showdown, maybe it leads to a shutdown, maybe it doesn't, does energize the president's base, who voted for him because they want this wall.
Democrats are up in arms because they're saying he's bullying. He's trying to say, I'm going to shut down the government if you don't give me the wall. Meanwhile, he's been saying he wants the wall since the very beginning. People went to the polls to vote for him because they liked his immigration stance. This is Maxine Waters. Listen to this.
You know, this president is a bully, and he'll try and intimidate all of us. He's not going to shut down anything. He's not going to shut down the government, and we're not going to be intimidated by his bluffing and his bullying.
Okay, so she feels, and Democrats, and a number of Republicans as well, feel the president is simply bluffing. But can we take you back to March of this past year? Pete, you were actually here that morning. That afternoon,
Good memory.
when the president signed that gigantic omnibus spending bill, he said he was so angry that there was no money in there for the wall, and he said he would never, ever, ever sign a stink bomb bill like that again. Watch this.
As a matter of national security, I've signed this omnibus budget bill. There are a lot of things that I'm unhappy about in this bill. There are a lot of things that we shouldn't have had in this bill, but we were, in a sense, forced, if we want to build our military, we were forced to have. There are some things that we should have in the bill. But I say to Congress, I will never sign another bill like this again. I'm not going to do it again.
Steve, I do remember that press conference because we weren't sure when he walked up to the podium whether he was going to announce that he's signing it or whether he's vetoing it because his opposition.
And that was when he was saying, I'm going to shut down the government, and he actually walked that back and did it, and he ended up signing that. But he later said, I want line item veto power. I want to be able to say, I like this part of it, I don't like that part of it.
And never again.
He was referring to, he will never again sign one of those great big omnibus bills that was just a great big...
Everything put in there.
It was just a mess. Well, here's the thing. He won't be signing that kind of bill this time because right now they're going through regular order. They've negotiated. I think they're close to passing 9 of 12 appropriation bills.
Senate.
So there won't be a big omnibus thing. So he won't sign one of those again, but he's not going to get any of the money for the wall, it looks like right now, unless something happens.
Well, government is funded through the end of September, so something has to be done. And to your point, Steve, the Senate's working to finish the 9 out of those 12 spending bills. They're hoping to finish it next week. The House only passed 6 of its annual funding bills, and they have gone on recess now for the month of August.
Otherwise known as vacation.
Right.
For the whole month. But no,
they've got some work to do when they come
voters
back.
of this president who hear him and understand what he's been emphasizing, I don't even know what the 9 of the 12 are. I've looked at it, but for one of those 9 not to be funding for the wall is eminently frustrating for everyone who knows that's the president's biggest priority.
Sure, and I think the one that is the funding for the wall is the Department of Homeland Security.
Yes,
so
it is.
That's the one that's going to be the sticking point because the Democrats do not want to give the president what he wants regarding immigration.
And the problem's in the Senate, right? Not the House? They think they can pass it in the House?
Ultimately, it's a problem in both because whatever the House gives the Senate, nonetheless, it's just one of those things. All those members of Congress who are out on vacation, recess right now, you got to figure they are going to get their ear chewed off by. I just heard the president say you're not going to do anything about the wall. What's up with that? I thought we sent you to do something about the wall. There are a lot of people who don't want the wall, want a DACA deal, and that's part of the mix as well.
Well, he said he's willing to make the deal. Yeah. Just give me my wall in exchange for that deal.
Give me my wall. Give me my wall.
Meanwhile,
my big, beautiful wall.
Let's talk a little bit about this. Ever since that primary here in New York City's 14th district in June, everybody's been talking about the new face of the Democratic Party. And there it is. She is right there. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. What's interesting is the more we hear about her and her big ideas about tuition-free college and Medicare for all and socialism and stuff
Gutting
like
the
that.
military.
$15 minimum wage, yeah.
Her math doesn't add up. But nonetheless, you listen to the media, they think she is the future. Listen to this.
The big unknown, I think, is whether the Democratic and liberal energy in the country right now will actually translate into electoral victories. Our primary contest in New York with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, that really suggests a level of participation in races where many voters didn't participate before.
Is she and others like her taking the party too far to the left?
Frankly, the Republican Party has gone so far to the right that some of the things that candidates like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez are calling for, I think Democrats really should consider doubling down on their base.
The broader context, what she's part of is not just a progressive wave. There's a pink wave. There's record numbers of female candidates. A lot of that, I think, gets to the engagement of women in this election.
Well, there's a lot of talk of waves, right? That the future of the Democratic Party is socialism and this new socialist from the Bronx. But if you actually look at voter turnout in the Bronx on June 24th, that primary that put her in the forefront, you've got over 200,000 registered Democrats there, but only 27,000 actually came out to vote. So that's a 13% voter turnout rate. I'm not a mathematician, but that's not a lot of people. Or constitutes an absolute wave of enthusiasm for socialism.
Right. And if you live in that area and you don't like the way that it turned out, you can't complain because only 13% voted. If you didn't vote, you can't complain. But I bet Joe Crowley is just kicking himself now.
Sure.
He was the number 4, is that right? The number 4 Democrat in Washington, and he lost to her. Didn't really campaign very much, didn't show up for the debate, and then she comes out of nowhere and she beats him.
The other component is it was a primary in June. and people are not motivated in June to go vote. The closer you get to November, of course, most of the people who do vote show up in November for a general.
That's true.
But the primary, the further away, the harder it is to get people.
But you know what? Good
motivated.
for her. Good for her. Ultimately, you know, a stale status quo politician took his district for granted, didn't campaign, wouldn't debate.
Didn't work, right.
She went out and said, I'm going to relate to the people. I might be a socialist, but they want something other than this guy over there. And she won. So
right.
you can't fault her for that.
And because she beat Joe Crowley, who was the establishment person, all the people who are establishment in Congress are going, I wonder if that's a preview of coming attraction.
Maybe we should be socialists too.
Some people were saying that he could be running as an independent and then go against her in November. I don't think he's come out and said that that's the case, but that was a rumor.
What's going on this Monday morning? Thank you very much for joining us. And Jillian joins us now with some headlines.
That's right. Good Monday morning. Still following the wildfires out west. So let's get you caught up on what's going on there. The wildfires are growing by the hour across Northern California. The fires, which erupted 1 week ago, taking 6 lives, including 2 firefighters. We just learned the name of the second, Brian Hughes, losing his life near Yosemite National Park, along with a woman and her 2 young great-grandchildren. Tens of thousands of people forced to flee their homes to safety. The Sacramento Bee reporting 2 people suspected of looting evacuated homes were arrested. The illegal immigrant accused of killing a Florida cop is expected in court today. Whistler Desmarais facing first-degree murder charges. Fort Myers officer Adam Jobbers Miller died over the weekend, a week after being shot in the head responding to an armed robbery. 34 officers have been shot and killed in the line of duty just this year alone. That's just 1 short of the 35 officers shot and killed all of last year. American Airlines getting back on track after a computer glitch impacted flights nationwide. The airline's main operating system went down for about 40 minutes yesterday, temporarily suspending flights. Last month, a glitch at an American-owned PSA Airlines canceled about 3,000 flights. That cost the carrier about $35 million in revenue. Emotional moments at the Baseball Hall of Fame induction ceremony. One of this year's inductees, Jim Thome, tears up as his daughter performs the national anthem.
For the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming.
Oh, look at that. Proud dad, Thome, hugging his daughter on the stage right after she finished. What a beautiful moment there. The Slugger, one of 6 players inducted into Cooperstown in Sunday's ceremony. Send it back to you.
That is so sweet. I'm glad they asked her to do it. She has a beautiful voice.
Yes, she does.
Wow.
Play ball.
And congrats to him.
Congrats very much indeed. All right. Thank you, Jillian. Meanwhile, he danced when the court ruled his city could protect illegals. Remember this?
A sanctuary city, yeah.
Well, now Philadelphia's liberal mayor is cutting off a contract with ICE, and our next guest says he's making the city of brotherly love dangerous for everybody.
Nice. Awesome.
And Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the notorious RBG, just made a big announcement about her future, her 5-year plan. Coming up.
I'm having such a good time. I'm having a ball. Don't stop me now. If you want to have a good time, just give me
A sanctuary city, yeah.
Seems happy there. Philadelphia's liberal Democratic mayor sparking outrage last month for dancing in celebration over his sanctuary city win, and now he's tripling down on his opposition to ICE.
We're not going to provide them additional information so they can go out and round up people.
If I could abolish ICE, I would. But we can abolish this contract, and we are.
Well, here with reaction, Pennsylvania State Republican Representative Martina White. Good morning to you, Martina.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
What is up with the mayor out there?
Oh, dear. It's truly shocking that the mayor was willing to end a contract that was actually helping to keep our community safe. Federal immigration officials were using this PARS system to access information about people who were previously arrested, who committed a crime other than being here illegally.
So ultimately, what is his end game here?
You know, public officials and activists, they make a claim that victims and witnesses are not able to come forward. But the reality is that they most definitely can come forward if they feel that they are a victim of crime. Actually, federal immigration officials provide an incentive to do so. They have a U visa that they offer to people who are here undocumented that may be a victim of crime. They can come forward and report the crime and actually obtain potentially an opportunity to get legal status.
Well, you would think he would be for that.
You would think. And in 2010, I mean, the rationale that the mayor is currently using, in 2010, the old mayor, Michael Nutter, actually excluded the sharing of information about witnesses and victims. So it's really not a good rationale, if anything.
No kidding. Well, ICE has issued a statement, and they say this. ICE is deeply disappointed with the city's decision, despite these attempts to obstruct ICE's lawful efforts to apprehend criminal aliens. The agency remains committed to its efforts to uphold public safety in the city of Philadelphia. It does sound like the mayor is part of the abolish ICE, they can't do anything right movement.
I think he actually stated that he wanted to abolish ICE, and he didn't even provide any kind of explanation as to why he was willing to just completely get rid of it entirely and not replace it with any alternative or do reforms. It was merely just a statement, obviously, to cater to folks who aren't necessarily the majority of Philadelphia.
Ultimately, it's for you, it's all about safety, isn't it?
It really is. I think safety is a top priority of any government official, to make sure that the people and the law enforcement officers that are out there doing this job each and every day have the resources that they need in order to keep our community safe.
Well, let's see what happens. State Representative from the great state of Pennsylvania, Martina White. Martina, thank you very much.
Thank you. It's
nice
a pleasure.
To meet you.
Thanks.
All right, coming up, Democratic Socialist Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez knows exactly how to pay for all that free stuff she wants to give everybody.
Reversed the tax bill, but raised our corporate tax rate to 28%. If we do those two things and also close some of those loopholes, that's $2 trillion right there.
But can that idea actually work? A debate is coming up next. Plus, a bridesmaid begs for a refund on her plane ticket after getting fired by the bride. And you know what? The airline gave it to her. The debate now, driving the internet nuts about her.
Some exotic booze, there's a bar in far Bombay. Come fly with me, let's fly away.
At Farmers, we've seen almost...
Welcome back. A couple of quick headlines for you. Dramatic pictures out of Greece, where people are forced to flee into the sea to escape fast-moving wildfires. Wow. 91 people, unfortunately, now dead, and 25 are missing nearly 1 week after the fires were sparked. It's the deadliest wildfire in Europe since the year 1900. Officials believe arson is to blame. And in another story, a French city just 6 miles from the Eiffel Tower is now home to 300,000 illegals, according to a government report. There are an estimated 135 different nationalities living in the suburb. Again, as we said, just 6 miles from the Eiffel Tower. Up to 80 migrants arrive in Paris every single day. They don't really have their arms around that one, do they? Ainsley, down to you.
Thank you, Pete. Well, Democrats' love of socialism is a losing strategy, but they foolishly follow it anyway. That's according to RNC spokesperson Kayleigh McEnany in a new op-ed. And she is here to debate that idea with political commentator Wendy Osefo. Ladies, thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so Kayleigh, for folks at home who haven't read your op-ed, which I have, can you kind of tell people at home what the message is and why you wrote it?
Sure. There's this very disturbing trend within the Democratic Party towards socialism, and you just look at the facts, you see that there are now 42 candidates running with the endorsement of the Democratic Socialist Party. Politico polls showed that 35% of Democrats want to replace Nancy Pelosi with a socialist. That's a third of the Democratic Party. You have Tom Perez, the head of the DNC, who said Ocasio-Cortez, of course, the Democratic Socialist, is the future of our party. So there's this identifiable trend, and it's very disturbing because, as we know, socialism has failed wherever it's been tried. Cuba, Venezuela, the Soviet Union. We must reject it. We must stop this. And it's a losing strategy for Democrats.
Wendy, how do you feel about the majority, or not the majority, a third of Democrats saying that they want to replace Nancy Pelosi with a socialist? Especially if you read Kayleigh's article or op-ed, it goes into great detail about what some of these communist socialist countries, what they do to the people.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting strategy by the Democrats. But what I believe that we're doing here is we're using socialism as a pejorative in the article written by Kayleigh. But socialism has a lot of variations. We're not talking about the Marxism theories of, let's say, China, Cuba, or the Soviet Union, but rather the socialism seen in Denmark or Switzerland or other Nordic countries. So what these candidates are really trying to say here is they want to have equal rights and opportunities for all people when it comes to healthcare, when it comes to education, when it comes to housing. And if you look at one of the greatest movements, which is the $15 minimum wage, that's been around since 1938, so that's nothing new here. But what is new is people are saying that they're tired of the United States giving to the haves and taking away from the have-nots, and they want to make a difference here for the American people.
All right, Kayleigh, how do you respond to that when she says it's a variation of socialism? It's not the Marxism, it's not the Communist Manifesto.
Sure, and that's the trick that Democrats are using. They're calling it democratic socialism, but just because people vote for it, that's the Democratic part, it doesn't change the fact that that is what it is. It's socialism. I'm glad Wendy mentioned Denmark. You look at Denmark, the middle class can't even afford cars there because there's a 180% tax on new cars. You look at Sweden, which Bernie Sanders often touts. The head of IKEA, who was from Sweden, had to leave the country because of the onerous taxation. Everywhere it's been tried, so-called democratic socialism, Israel in the first few decades, post-independence India, it's failed. They've had to have IMF bailouts. They've had to have bank rescue efforts in these countries. It does not work.
Yeah.
And if they want to try this, I promise you, voters are going to always choose the party of Lincoln over the party of Lenin.
I mean, Wendy, I know you've worked so hard for your career, and I feel like that's what capitalism, that's what America teaches. It's not socialism. If you read Kayleigh's article, it talks about free college, government-mandated wages, universal basic income. We had a campus reform go out to a college and asking the kids, how do you expect to pay for all this? They love all of the free college. They like the wage to be the same across the board. But then the reporter asks the students, how do you expect to pay for this? Well, the government will pay for it. And then the reporter says, but you are the government. Those are your tax dollars that are paying for it. So how do you expect to pay for it? And knowing you, we're friends. I know that you've worked so hard for your career. Don't you want to teach that to your kids and not you can sit back and the government's going to take care of you?
Absolutely. You know, we're not talking about handouts here. What we're saying is that we just want to have an equal playing field for all people. And unfortunately, based on our education system, that is not the truth. One thing that I find really interesting is this whole notion of how are we going to pay for it. We know if we go to single payer health care, we will cut out $400 billion alone on administrative costs. So there are ways for us to work around this. But I think what's really important here is for the American people to have a government, to have a country that they can trust and believes that no matter where you come from, what family you're born into, or what community you live in, you too have a shot at the American dream, and that's a right that should be granted to all people.
All right,
Wendy, I think Ainsley's right to bring up the price. It's $1.4 trillion for single payer. It's $3.6 trillion for free college. The problem with socialism is you eventually run out of people's money, as Margaret Thatcher famously said.
All right, ladies, thanks so much. Thanks for being with us. Great to see you. You're welcome. Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg just made a big prediction about her future, her 5-year plan coming up next. And President Trump is coming off a huge week, both at home and abroad. Could this week be even better? Dan Bongino says get ready for more winning. He's on deck.
Over the last 24 hours.
A can of Rotel and Velveeta. I'm going to actually show you how simple by just having Sally do all this stuff. Come over and take a look at that. So it's delicious. It is cheese, it's grits. We are going to let them cook for a minute or two. We're going to come back and taste them. It tastes like there's a little tarragon. Really? It is delicious. Well, this morning I am happy to be revealing the never-before-seen cover of the Happy Cookbook. It's a project my wife Kathy and I have been working on for 30-some years. The idea is simple. There are certain foods that make us happy. For instance, on my birthday, Kathy makes me the same pot roast with the dry Lipton onion soup and the cream of mushroom soup that my mom made, everybody's mom made. And as soon as I walk in the house these days, I smell that. It takes me back to a time when I was 8 years old. Aww. We all have foods like that, and our cookbook is a collection of over 100 recipes that make people happy. All sorts of people, famous people, friends, neighbors. Ainsley's in there, Brian's in there, you name it, they're in there. Most of us eat 3 meals a day. Might as well make at least one of them happy. Cookbook comes out in October. You can pre-order it today wherever you buy books. The Happy Cookbook, a celebration of the foods that make America smile.
I love it.
I love the cover with the big reveal. We've been talking about it for so long.
We have been working on this for years.
Okay, a cookbook's not easy to do.
I have written a couple of other books. A cookbook is 10 times harder than writing a nonfiction book.
Why?
Because everything is so specific. You got to write stuff down. I have worked with so many people. I worked with your mom. I worked with Brian's mom to perfect your favorite recipes.
But my mom's was like, put a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and he's like, hold on, Dan. I need precise measurements. And then this cookbook's got to come out because all of us are gaining a lot of weight because he tests the foods. He and Kathy make them in their kitchen and they bring them in for us all to taste.
I brought in cookies today because today's Sally Ducey's birthday.
And you have a real passion for food, which I appreciate.
I do indeed. So anyway, it's great. It's coming out in October. You can pre-order.
Lots of famous people in this book. Don't you have Sarah Sanders? You have her famous, the pecan pie?
The pecan pie.
Do you
really?
I have that in there. I will reveal a secret when the book comes out that nobody knows about how she crushes those pecans.
Oh.
It is something so unique.
Really?
Oh, absolutely. All right. Anyway. All right. Let's bring in Dan Bongino.
Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you very much.
Congrats.
Dan Bongino, he's down in Florida. He's former Secret Service guy, used to be a cop here in New York City, and he's host of a wildly successful podcast called The Dan Bongino Show.
Hey, Dan.
Hey, Dan.
Good morning, Dan.
Hey, guys. Steve, I just want to say I have nothing to add to your cookbook at all. I cannot cook. I can't cook ice. The best I can do for you, Steve, is a protein shake post-workout. Here's what you do. Add protein shake and spin. That is the best I've got for you, brother.
Then you need the cookbook to figure out how to do it because they're not complicated.
I'm on it. I'm on it on Amazon.
Dan, the cookbook, sure to be a winner. You remember the president saying on the campaign trail, you're going to get sick of winning. You said there's been so much winning, and if you look ahead at the big week, what's coming forward. I mean, my gosh, the few weeks in the past, there have been like 4 or 5 major things that have been on the docket. Too much for us to almost keep up with. So what do you expect for the week ahead?
I have to agree with him. He said we'd get tired of winning. I am about as energetic about winning as I've ever been, and there's more ahead. Here's what we've got. Tax reform was just monumental. We've seen now the effects on the economy, 4.1% growth. By the way, a figure under Trump that Obama acolytes themselves said was going to be impossible. We've now hit that figure. Ainsley, an enormous announcement with the EU. Let's not sleep on this one either. This announcement of going towards a zero tariff environment with one of the biggest trading partners in the world. Do you know what that means for American businesses? The massive amount of money that will be now taxed, essentially tax-free on the tariff side going into Europe. This was huge. And one more thing, coming up around the corner, the Chinese are running scared right now. Because now if we cut this deal with the EU, the Chinese will need to cut a deal as well. If we can get to zero tariffs with them and save our intellectual property, this guy's going to be one of the most consequential American first-term presidents in our history.
Well, that's what you say, but you watch a lot of channels, over the weekend where they have the Sunday chat shows, and the so-called Trump derangement syndrome is in full bloom because they don't understand what the guy's doing.
Well, they don't understand the new rules, Steve, and I've been saying this over and over. The new rules, there's a new sheriff in town. The new sheriff's Donald Trump. You guys are familiar with the old rules, right? The old rule was you never mess with people who buy ink by the barrel, referring, of course, to the media. Donald Trump said, here's the new rules. You never mess with a guy who doesn't buy ink because he tweets for free. Those are the new rules. He has completely exposed them for the Democrat hacktivists they are. That's all they are. They're hacks. They cannot get out of their bubble for a moment and just get past what he says and tweets and what is actually going on. But, Steve, it's to their own detriment. The American people are feeling the impact in their own wallets. They get what's going on because they see it. It's real to them. It may not be real to the coastal elites, but it's real to them.
Dan, very much so. Well, the president tweeting about the media yesterday, he said this. He said, when the media, driven insane by their Trump derangement syndrome, reveals internal deliberations of our government, it truly puts the lives of many, not just journalists, at risk. Very unpatriotic. Freedom of the press also comes with a responsibility to report the news. It was also revealed that the president met recently with the publisher of the New York Times, which the president calls the failing New York Times. This is what that publisher said after his meeting with the president. He said, I told the president directly that I thought that his language was not just divisive, but increasingly dangerous. I warned that it was putting lives at risk. So the publisher of the New York Times says the president's putting lives at risk. The president pointing out that there's a patriotic duty that journalists should have. Where does this scrap go?
Well, I think there's a couple things going on here, Pete. I've been doing a lot of research on the Russiagate, Spygate, however you want to refer to it, and there's clearly a leak operation going on within the federal government to expose leakers. We've already seen it with the prosecution of James Wolfe. So this is not a mystery. It's not conspiracy theory stuff. It's actually happening. Donald Trump, I think, knows a lot more than he's obviously tweeting out, and he understands what I'm getting at here is how willingly the press will take national security information, even if some of it is part of an operation to expose them. So he's probably thinking to himself, I can't believe this. Like, these guys will print this stuff even though they can't verify the authenticity of it, and it hurts us. I mean, this is serious stuff, and he always knows a little bit more than these press folks, and it's interesting how they constantly underestimate him, and he just keeps winning. He just keeps dunking on him every day.
The new rules. All right. Dan Bongino, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you.
All right, let's hand it over to Jillian. Thanks, Dan. Let's hand it over to Jillian, who has some more headlines for us.
That's right. Good morning and congratulations on your cookbook. Steve, cannot wait to get it.
Me neither.
Awesome. Very exciting. All right, let's get you caught up on some of your stories that we're following. And while Democrats call to abolish ICE, many party leaders refuse to answer direct questions about why.
Congressman Lujan, I want to ask you about that. What about